Gardeners get excited every spring with the gushing forth of flowers and the bursting buds. They know it's time to plant peas, the very first seeds to go in the garden every year. Peas may also be the first garden plant that humans cultivated. There are no wild ones, and they appear in gardens from Ethiopia through Asia Minor to northwest India. And dried peas were found in the ashes of Troy, caves in Hungary, and on the sites of Swiss lake dwellers. Peas love cool weather, and they need to go into the ground early as we can get the groundwork. So a lot of times we just leave the soil rough dug in the fall so that in the spring it's ready to go. We like to get a healthy dose of compost on it, rough plow it, and then in the spring that land will dry out so much quicker than if we just leave it in a cover crop or unplowed. Like other members of the legume family of plants, peas love lime. So we like to sprinkle a little bit of lime over the rough plowed land in the fall so that there's plenty of calcium in the ground the next spring when we're getting ready to plant the peas. Lime takes a while to get incorporated into the soil biology. I like to put about 50-pound sack of lime for every 1,000 square feet of garden area. This is the equivalent to putting a ton of lime on an acre of land, which is what we do as farmers in Tennessee about every other year to sweeten the soil, raise the pH, and add the valuable nutrient calcium. Some gardeners like to soak their pea seeds before planting to get an extra jump on the season. These peas do not like hot weather, so we want to get them in as early as we can, and by soaking the seed in some water for a few days, they sort of pre-germinate them. Pea seeds don't germinate well in 50-degree soil. They like it 60 degrees a lot better. Of course, so do I. If I'm going to soak any kind of seed, I like to add a little bit of compost. This is some biodynamic barrel compost that we make, and this is chock full of lots of enzymes and things that plants like, and so I like to put a little of that into the water with the peas and stir it up, and that way they'll soak in some nice, good, healthy compost, and they'll soak that up for a few days, and then when we plant them, they'll be ready to go. A type of bacteria lives in a symbiotic relationship with the legume family of plants, which includes peas and clover. This bacteria living on the roots is able to get atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. There's 1,400 pounds of nitrogen in the air over every square foot of soil. And this is the kind of nitrogen that we want in our plants. It comes down through the rainfall, and it's also made by the compost and the microorganisms in the soil. We don't really want to have a loose nitrate from ammonia and urea and things like that. So we, as organic farmers, use compost, and we want to ensure that our legumes have the right inoculant. I'll show you some of them in this pea plant right here. So we carefully lift up a pea plant with the roots on it, and you can see these little things. These are a very valuable form of nitrogen that we want to have in our gardens. So we grow crops like beans and peas because they improve the soil. Clover is known as the poor man's fertilizer because it can enrich soils and it just doesn't cost a lot. To ensure that our plants have this bacteria present in the soil, we can simply take some of these nodules, crush them up, and add them to our pea seed. We could take some soil from where peas have grown and sprinkle it into the pea seed. This would do the same thing. Or we can actually buy the microbes in a little bag. It's there's 200 million viable cells per gram of these various forms of this bacteria, which lives on peas and beans and vetches and clovers and other members of the legume family. So we just sprinkle some of this black powder onto our pea seed. Of course, it helps to have the pea seed dampened a little bit. And now we know that we'll have these very beneficial bacteria on our plants. In early spring, as soon as the ground can be worked, we take a hoe and hoe a little furrow into that rough plowed land. I like to go about 2 inches deep, and then we sprinkle this pea seed in there. I put them about 1 inch apart or so. Some people put a double row 6 inches apart and put their fence in between them, but that makes it a little difficult to hoe out later. Peas like to grow up pretty thickly, so I don't worry about them being too close together. We usually just take a rake and then loosely cover them up. We want to keep that soil pretty loose on top because a heavy rain in the spring will pack it down a lot. And we definitely don't want any pea seed left on top of the ground because the birds will then know that there's something good to eat there, and birds will peck these out of the ground. They know they're there. Peas need to be staked, otherwise they fall on the ground. So this year we put some metal T-posts every 10 or 15 feet apart with some tobacco sticks in, and we put twine and tied that to the stakes, and then we just, every now and then I would push the peas up against the twine there so that they would climb up better. We got a few vertical twines on it too, but other years I've done things like used woven wire or cattle panels, or you can even just get some branches out of the wood, some tree branches, and just stick in the ground. But somehow you need to keep these peas off the ground, otherwise it gets to be a big mess. Peas and carrots are companion plants. They like to grow next to each other. So I like to plant carrots in the pea patch. But carrots are really hard to plant and not get them too thick. So here's another gardening trick. We mix carrot seed with sand. And then after the last cultivation of the peas, when they're up and they're pretty well cultivated, I simply just sprinkle the carrots and sand like this, gently rake it into the soil, and then we have carrots that come up so that hopefully when the pea trellises come down, we have a little crop of carrots in here too. Peas need a 5-year rotation before they're planted back in the same ground again. Otherwise, you'll get pea failure from rots and diseases and such. For English peas, we're growing Green Arrow and Lincoln. I think I like the Green Arrows better. These are the peas that you shell. When I harvest peas, I use 2 hands and hold the vine and pick with the other hand. Otherwise, you tear the vines off of your trellis. Our snow peas are Oregon Giant Sugar Pod. This is a very disease-resistant pea that makes 4 or 5 inch long pods, and the peas swell up in there, and they're really good for stir frying. And this is what you'll find if you order peas at a Chinese restaurant. They'll probably be snow peas. In the late 70s, a new vegetable was introduced called snap peas, and these are sort of like the snow peas, but they're even more crisper, sweeter, and we just love them. Snap peas are a little bit more leggy and prone to fall over, but we grow them every year anyway. Kids love to gobble them up. They're a great snack, and you can cook them, lightly cook them a little bit if you can get them to the kitchen, but that's kind of hard to do because they're just so good to eat. It's quite a challenge to get a pea crop in Tennessee because it gets so hot so quick, and peas do not like hot weather. But they're worth growing because peas are so delicious, and you can even eat the pea leaves when the plants come up in the spring. Just don't eat too many of them so you don't kill your plants, but they're the first green that we eat out of our garden in the spring.